Welcome, HUAA Nation, Howard University. We are so happy to be here and to be here with two very important and illustrious people. My name is Seanne N. Murray. I'm the founder of Attain 9 Global and the creator of Chicago 1919. We have with us the illustrious Keith David, who's a three-time Emmy Award winning, Tony nominated, Juilliard trained actor with the silver throat, the voice, and thank you, Keith, for being here. And of course, we are here and so excited to present and to honor Nate Parker for the amazing, this does get me choked up. Nate, I told you I was going to get choked up, for the amazing work that he does in terms of creating films that really impact Black people, impact Africans. And thank you for being here, both of you. I just want to say a little prelude, which is that, Keith and I were talking one day, we were talking about Chicago 1919, and we started talking about you, Nate. And we were talking about the impact that you've made with film, particularly since Birth of a Nation. And we were wondering where you were and why we hadn't seen anything. We both said, oh, I hope he's doing something amazing. And then literally just a few days later, we saw the trailer for American Skin, and we were like, there it is. There it is. And so we had to just get with you and honor you and let the whole world, as much of the world as we can, know what you're doing. And so as a Howard alum, the first question I have to ask you is, do you have any kind of Howard stories or Howard people or people from history that make an impact on your life?
Well, let's just say this. Everything that I do, every film that I've ever done, I've been able to travel to the HBCU circuit. I've demanded it from publicity. And as my brother Keith will tell you, you have to demand it because it's not on their radar. When I say there, we know who we speak of. So, I've had wonderful experiences at Howard, being able to either be show films or do panels. As you know, I do, a lot of work with Wiley College, Norfolk State University, Lincoln. It seems as though the films that I've been a part of always have some type of thread of either our ancestors and the work that they've done, or some type of footprint or blueprint leaning forward toward the future that we want to see for our children and our children's children. So anything that has to do with the HBCU circuit, I'm not only on board with because it's I enjoy the experience, but I think it's a responsibility. So I thank you for reaching out. And as you know, you reached out, I responded, you know what I mean, right away.
Oh yeah, on Instagram, by the way, everyone should know. So social media works.
Yeah, and I'm not the social media person. I get in and I do what I have to do, and I'm promoting. And I actually have an event coming up with some sororities and some fraternities within our community. I think all of that is important, specifically because this film is a contemporary story that is designed to really encourage, to incite young people and to get them engaged into a conversation and meet them where they stand. When I see, you saw my reaction when I saw my brother Keith, what you mean to us, Keith, with your unapologetic Blackness, your unapologetic strength. You may not know it, but you've been encouraging me and so many others for years. When we have hard times and struggles, we look at you and we're like, man, this brother has never, ever hesitated. His knees have never buckled. And it's important that you know that, I want to be that for the next generation. I'm just a filmmaker. I just make art. I'm not the savior. None of us are. We're just contributing to the conversation.
Right.
But just know that as someone that is doing his very best to bring us forward, I look to you for strength, and I appreciate your contribution to our story.
Well, I can only tell you again how deeply I appreciate you, because these, it's important. We live in a time, obviously art has to meet commerce. Mm-hmm. That's a very important aspect of this time that we live in. But it's also important that art reflects what is actually going on in our lives, especially in our communities. I mean, the way you have brought out telling stories that mean something, that resonate deeply with us. I mean, it's just so, it's so powerful. I mean, I wanted to ask, and it's kind of I feel like the only stupid question is an unasked question. But I wanted to say, with American Skin, I can tell you, I can probably, quote 10 incidences that it could have been spawned from. But was there one in your experience that particularly made you begin to write this story? I mean, Sean was saying earlier that we saw you in an interview and you were talking about this story.
Yeah.
The nation.
I don't know if you know that, Nate. You did an interview.
Were you writing it then?
Yeah.
Or did it, because there's so many things that came out since then, so many, news stories that makes this not just impactful, but hugely significant.
Yeah. And Nate, you did an interview with the Breakfast Club in 2016 on Birth of a Nation. I don't know if you've watched it recently, but you literally laid out this entire film in that interview. Yeah. So tell us what made you move forward?
It's a fantastic question, and the answer is something that's deeply personal. I got custody of my nephew when he was in 8th grade, and he had arrived, 13, 14 years old, and he came from Portsmouth, Virginia, from a broken school system, like so many are in our communities. And I kind of intervened in his life, asked my sister if I could take him, brought him here, put him in one of the top schools, and he entered that education system. And I thought at that moment, all right, he's I put him on a path where he's going to have the opportunities that so many wouldn't have where he came from. And then Michael Brown was murdered. And I can remember sitting watching the news, and he was sitting next to me, and he said, Uncle Nate, what do I do if I get pulled over by the police on my bike? And, the knee-jerk reaction was, all right, well, you know who your uncle is. You get your phone out, call me, I'll come. And then I was like, whoa, don't grab your phone. I said, okay. I said, well, just slow down. If you see them behind you, slow down. Carefully take your feet down. No sudden moves. Make sure your hands slowly go straight up. Turn and make eye contact with whoever's officer is there so he can see her humanity. I'm talking about this. My nephew is 6 foot, 6'1", dark skinned, even when he was, going in the 8th grade. And so I'm like, make sure they can see you, see your baby face. And I'm talking to him and he's looking at me like, and I realized in that instant that I was traumatizing him. That I was heaping trauma on him to keep him safe. And then my next thought was, I don't have an answer. And imagine, I've been in the streets, I've been to protests, and we all have this energy, but when we really think about it, we really think about the fragility of our lives, none of us are safe.
No.
If President Obama put a hoodie on and jogged down Pennsylvania Avenue in the dark, we could have been reading about him on the news, and that's real. So in an instant, I realized no amount of economic status makes you exempt, no amount of assimilation, no amount of white school, Asian school, wherever you want to put them, no amount of affluence. If you have this American skin that we're living in, you're this close to being gone, being a hashtag, some black person being propped up next to a police chief saying, don't do nothing crazy, and then us going on to the next one. And so it was out of that desperation that I felt like I need to do something with my art to give an answer to my nephew. And that's when I started, the seeds of writing this story. And it's funny because if I mentioned in that interview, it's because, I realized after Birth of a Nation that I wanted my art to move more in silence. I wanted to just, here it is. What? Right. You know what I mean? Like I'm understanding now that this revolutionary walk, and not to say I'm a revolutionary, but the work that needs to be done, the work needs to be done. When it's ready, you give it to the people, they'll be ready. But it took me time to craft it. I interviewed countless police officers. I interviewed the parents of people who had lost their their children to murder. And out of those dialogues and all of my boxes of notes, I was able to craft this narrative. Because I realized when I went to Ferguson after, my nephew and I had this interaction. When I went to New York in March with, Eric Garner, when I went to these protests, I realized the healing we needed, the conversation that we needed, the confrontation we needed was never happening. And it's never happening because of the infrastructure of our environments don't allow for it. There's no medium where a cop can say, you know what, man, look, Black people, y'all are crazy, whatever he feels. Like this, you know why? Like there's no, what happens, they kill us, they go home. Weeks later, they show up with a canned conversation, canned speech on what happened. And then there, no accountability, then we go on to the next. And this is the vicious cycle we're in. So I felt, what would that situation in the spirit of, Sidney Lumet and 12 Angry Men, in the spirit of Dog Day Afternoon, how do I force the conversation that has never happened? They don't give us a conversation, they give us a barbecue in the Black neighborhood with the cops. We don't need that.
We don't
And
need
Nate, what kind of pushback did you get on making this film? Was it similar to the pushback you got with Birth of a Nation, or was this different?
No, I didn't have pushback when I made Birth of a Nation. I went to ball players. I went to people in our community that I knew had money, and I sold them on a legacy. What do you want to be remembered for? You'll make a lot of basketball 3-pointers. You'll make a lot of touchdowns. But where will you be? Where will your receipts be when you're on your deathbed?
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
So that's what I did when I. And the same goes for when I funded American Skin. It's hard to make movies. It's really hard to make ones about liberating Black folks.
Yeah.
And even harder to make ones where you have creative control. Because isn't it ironic, specifically for Keith, isn't it ironic that we oftentimes have to ask our oppressor for the money to make a movie that exploits them so we can be free?
Well, that's why it doesn't get done. Because even if they have a magnanimous spirit, their support system is not going to allow them to do it, or certainly it hasn't. Or very, 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 very rarely, because it's very difficult. This is just human. It's very difficult to admit out loud, even to yourself in the mirror, how wrong I was, how wrong my thinking has been, because you can't change a man until you change his thinking.
Amen.
And you have to get him to admit, I got some stinking thinking going on here. Something has not been right. I have been told wrong.
That's right.
I'll never forget once, I was on a set, and I was talking to a white brother who was a former sheriff in Kentucky. And we were walking from lunch back to set. He said, he goes, Keith, I like you. I was like, okay, yeah. And no, man, no, I really like, I can talk to you. And I'm like, yeah, well, when I grew up, he says, my father told me all Black men were just the N-word. And his only experience with a Black man was attempting to arrest, it took 6 of them to arrest one Black man, and he broke one of their arms. And that was his only interaction with a Black man.
Right.
That becomes generational, because all he's telling his nephew is that story. He's not until he has that experience, he's not talking about the brother that he spoke to and was able to sit and have lunch with
Yeah.
and have a better than intelligent conversation and laugh and joke and exchange humanity.
Mhm, mhm.
You know,
You
they,
know,
the indoctrination of Willie Lynch and making us non-humans,
Mm.
not having no humanity. I mean, that has become so inbred in the society
Mhm.
that most people walk around in a state of amnesia. They don't even know that they have that.
Mm-mm.
mm.
They
But you
don't.
know, Keith,
They
and a lot. Oh,
and that's why they push back and resent so deeply when you try to woke them up.
mhm, mhm.
All listen. I'm telling you, like Dick Gregory said, I have a white racist mentality,
That's right.
so I know you got one,
Wow.
and I'm willing, but I'm willing to face it because the ism that I have inherited societally.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, let alone what my mama said or how she ever talked about the white man or talked about black people. I mean, I remember, growing up in the '60s and having conversations with my mother. Said, "Come on, Ma, you can't really feel. I mean, this is a black person we're talking about," and she would be like, "Yeah, right." But her experience was part of, this is another undermining effect. If you hire the wrong man for the wrong job, you can't help but to buttress your own experience.
Mhm.
You understand? I mean, you are already making yourself right.
Mm.
You're not even look. I mean, I remember being in companies, especially like classical companies, Shakespearean companies. Oh, we couldn't find a person of color that could speak the language. Where did you look?
Mm.
If you don't look, you can't find them.
Mhm. And you know what, Keith, that we see that across the board in all industries, even outside of, the theater world. I think theater gives us the opportunity in film to bring it home. When I practiced law, my very first day on the job, just coming out of law school, I was told that my white secretary did not want to work for a black female attorney. And when I worked my first day on Wall Street, I had a guy sitting next to me that told me a racist, misogynistic joke. And by the way, both of those people ended up fired because I did stand up for myself. But that was a choice that I had to make because I had to think about, if I stand up for myself, what's that going to do to my position? But it was more important to me that I stand up and I stand down. But I just wanted to get back to just the film because I know we only have a short time left, Nate. And one of the things I thought was really interesting, knowing that you did this film before, that you used the word in the film patriot quite a bit. And of course, we've been hearing that so much lately. And I wonder what you think about, having made that choice then and how the word is being used now.
I'll say this. I think we as Americans, citizens of the United States of America, should spend more time investigating the definitions of the words that crafted our nation. Uh, Most people couldn't tell you what the definition of a patriot is. Most people have never read the Constitution. So when you hear these buzzwords, there's kind of like a confusion, right? And there's a social media regurgitation around what it means, because we have people saying back to blue, but then we have them crushing police to death. The double standards and the just pervasive irony that we face just waking up is worth calling out. And as you saw in the film, I didn't make a film that's like, so heavily destructively one-sided to the point where you miss the essence of what the film is supposed to bring home. And I'm trying to mince my words so I don't give anything away. But I think anyone that calls himself a patriot should ask themselves first, what does a patriot mean? What does that word mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is it patriotic to be silent about the dehumanizing of a citizen, a fellow citizen. How many presidents have said the words, my fellow Americans? Who is he talking to?
Right.
You know, and I think that we have to ask ourselves these questions. If we are to call ourselves Americans, if we are to embody our citizenship, if we are to celebrate these centennials and these, what do they mean? You know what I mean? What are we talking about? You know? Go ahead.
If citizenship and patriotism imply a certain loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
whom are you being loyal to?
That's right. That's right. That's right. Because again, what does an American look like? It goes back to the title. Like, what does American skin look like? I describe. There's a guy coming around. Well, what did he look like? An American guy.
Mhm.
And then what was the other guy? A black guy.
Right. Exactly.
Come on,
Exactly.
come on. Let's
Yeah.
move.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So and I think it goes. It's so much deeper than KKK hate, and really, it's so much deeper than bipartisanship. You know, I think that we have this misunderstanding around white supremacy and who it can, you know, what it can infiltrate and who it can overtake with respect to thinking. You talked about our brother Dick Gregory and said, basically, and I've heard it before, my mentor says, I'm a recovering white supremacist. You know what I mean? And he always says, and this is something that I've really chewed on, I'm not so concerned about how white people see me. I'm more concerned about how I've been conditioned to see myself. You know, Carter G. Woodson says, Carter G. Woodson, who started Black History Month, an elder, an educator, he talks about, he says, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. You don't have to tell him to go to the back door. He will go on his own. And if there is no back door, he will cut one out for his pleasure. So it's like there's a thinking that we have to re-examine.
Yeah, and you know what? That was, I think, the perfect quote. I wish we had so much more time to speak with you and to explore this. I want to say, everybody, go see this film immediately.
Yeah.
It is a must-see. We need to see it. We need to support it. You're going to learn from this. You're going to feel. And I would say, too, take your white friends to see this film, too. You know, watch it with them. And I think it's a great platform for conversation and understanding. And Nate, just thank you so much for doing what you do.
Outstanding job, brother. Outstanding.
Yes, thank you.
I want to thank you also. We spoke a bit about, you kind of mentioned it, you said it crosses different professions. I want to thank you for standing in the gap for us as a journalist in this space. You know, my brother Keith and I, we can create these stories. We can create these moments, these legacy moments, but it's up to people like you, strong, powerful sisters that will stand in the gap and disseminate this information to other people. If not,
well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm following in your shoes because I'm doing Chicago 1919. So I'm a producer. I'm actually not a journalist. This is just what I do in my life is the best I can to impact the world. Keith knows that. So that's what we do.
You are impacting. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, brother.
Good to see you. Thank you, bro. All right.
Thank you.